In the quiet forests of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, a marriage pact sealed in blood would lead to 2 brutal murders and whispers of something far darker.
We begin tonight marking 1 year since an Iron River man went missing. Chris Regan was last seen on or around October 14th of 2014. His vehicle was found at...
Kelly Cochran made a promise to her husband on their wedding day. If either of them strayed, they would kill their lover together. When Kelly broke that vow with a co-worker named Chris Regan, the pact was enforced with chilling precision. But the violence didn't end there. What followed was a twisted game of revenge, deception, and claims of even more victims buried across the Midwest. Kelly Marie Cochran grew up in Merrillville, Indiana, just outside Chicago, living next door to a boy named Jason. They were childhood sweethearts who fell in love young and married shortly after Kelly graduated high school in the early 2000s. From the outside, they seemed devoted to each other, though friends and family described them as an unusual couple. Kelly was outgoing and talkative, while Jason remained withdrawn and quiet. What no one knew was the disturbing agreement they'd made on their wedding night, a pact that would bind them in ways far beyond traditional marriage vows. For about a decade, the couple ran a small pool maintenance business in Indiana. Jason worked hard, hauling equipment and servicing pools until his body gave out. Years of physical labor left him with severe back pain and deteriorating discs that made it impossible to continue. As medical bills piled up and Jason's condition worsened, the financial strain became unbearable. They needed a fresh start, somewhere they could afford to live, somewhere Jason could find relief for his chronic pain. In their search for solutions, they decided to relocate to Michigan's Upper Peninsula, drawn by the promise of legal marijuana that might ease Jason's suffering and the possibility of steady work for Kelly. In late 2013, Kelly and Jason arrived in Iron River, a small, isolated town deep in Michigan's northern wilderness. With a population barely reaching 3,000, Iron River was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. The town sat, surrounded by dense forests and abandoned mining pits, beautiful but unforgiving. Kelly quickly found employment at a local manufacturing plant that produced equipment for naval ships, while Jason stayed home, managing his pain with whatever he could get his hands on. At the plant, Kelly met Christopher Regan, an Air Force veteran who'd moved to Iron River from Detroit. 20 years older than Kelly, Chris was studying for a business degree and working to build a new life for himself. He'd come to the area to be near an old girlfriend named Terry, though their relationship had grown complicated. Chris had a pattern of infidelity that had damaged their bond, but they remained close friends who spoke frequently and cared deeply for one another. Chris and Kelly struck up a friendship that quickly became something more. Despite the age difference and Kelly's marriage, they began meeting regularly, usually at Chris's small apartment above a grocery store owned by Terry's parents. Their affair became an open secret at the plant, with co-workers whispering about the married woman and the veteran who seemed captivated by her attention. What Chris didn't realize was that every intimate moment they shared was pulling him closer to a trap that had been set years before he even met Kelly. By the fall of 2014, Chris had made a decision that would seal his fate. His knee injury from years of military service had worsened from standing all day at the factory, and he'd accepted a new job offer in Asheville, North Carolina. He gave his 2 weeks' notice and began packing up his life, planning to leave Iron River behind. He texted Terry about celebrating his new opportunity, excited about the fresh start waiting for him across the country. But Kelly had other plans rooted in the dark promise she'd made to Jason on their wedding day over a decade earlier. On October 14th, 2014, Kelly called Chris with an invitation he found irresistible. For the first time in their affair, she asked him to come to her house for dinner, promising an Italian meal and an intimate evening together. It was unusual they'd always met at his apartment, Never at the home Kelly shared with Jason, but perhaps she was offering him a proper goodbye, a final night together before he left for North Carolina. Chris stopped at a gas station to fill his tank, captured on surveillance footage that would become the last known image of him alive, then drove to Kelly's house with directions she'd provided. What happened inside that modest home would later be reconstructed through Kelly's own confessions, though the full truth remains shrouded in her web of lies and manipulation. According to her account, she and Chris were together upstairs when Jason emerged from the shadows carrying a rifle.
I'll be Chris, okay? I mean, I really like to, I just like to know how this happened, so what do I do?
When you'd come in, we were talking and playing around.
Where's he standing?
Like right next to me, we were talking.
Up close?
Yeah.
This way?
We were messing around right here.
You guys were messing around?
We didn't make it upstairs.
You were having sex right here? Okay. Well, I'm Chris, so we're standing here, we're fooling around, right? And then you decide to go up the stairs?
We're going into this one.
Okay. And how are we walking? You and I together? How are we walking?
I think he walked first because I closed up the door.
Okay, so he walks first, step, right? And you're where? Get in position. Okay. So he's standing right here, and you're right there. And you're telling me that Jason shot him from behind?
At the time, I didn't know he was shot.
Then what happens?
He fell.
This way.
Yeah.
He comes back, and both of you go down the stairs, and you go all the way down?
As Chris stood vulnerable and unaware, Jason fired a single shot from his rifle, the bullet tearing through Chris's skull. He died almost instantly, collapsing at the top of the stairs. The marriage pact Kelly and Jason had made years ago, the promise to eliminate any lover who came between them, had finally been fulfilled. But killing Chris was only the beginning of their horrific plan. Over the following hours, Jason dismembered Chris's body in their basement, using an electric saw to cut him into pieces. Kelly later directed investigators to the tools they'd used: a chisel, a saw blade, and forceps she'd attempted to extract the bullet with. They wrapped the remains in plastic sheeting, burned what they could in a barrel behind their house, then scattered Chris's body parts throughout the surrounding woods. His car was abandoned at a park-and-ride lot several miles outside town, staged to look as though he'd simply left for his new job without saying goodbye. Neighbors would later recall hearing a gunshot that night, followed by the sound of power tools running for hours in the darkness. But in a rural area where hunting was common and people kept to themselves, no one thought to investigate the disturbing sounds coming from the Cochran house. 10 days passed before anyone reported Chris missing. Terry grew increasingly worried when he stopped responding to messages and failed to show up for work. When she went to his apartment, she found it in disarray. Windows left open, dishes crusted in the sink, his medications abandoned. Most troubling, his knee brace was missing, an item Chris needed daily and would never have left behind. Terry immediately contacted the Iron River Police Department, where Police Chief Laura Frizzo took on the case, with determination that would eventually crack it wide open. Chief Frizzo ran a small department of only 4 officers, but she possessed an instinct for investigation that wouldn't let her accept easy answers. When Chris's car was discovered at the park and ride lot with directions to Kelly Cochran's house written on a piece of paper inside, Frizzo knew exactly where to focus her attention. She brought Kelly and Jason in for questioning, and while Jason appeared uncomfortable and evasive, Kelly seemed entirely at ease, even friendly. She admitted to having an affair with Chris, but claimed she and Jason had an open marriage and he didn't mind her relationships with other men. Jason's interview painted a very different picture. He spoke about his chronic pain and disability but seemed deeply troubled when discussing Kelly's infidelity. The detectives noticed something else strange. Kelly referred to Chris in past tense, saying he loved that car rather than he loves that car. A subtle slip that suggested she knew Chris was already dead. Despite their suspicions, investigators couldn't find evidence of foul play. When they searched the Cochran house in March 2015, they found weapons and disturbing writings by Jason about killing sprees and revenge. But no blood, no body, no proof of murder. Spooked by the investigation closing in around them, Kelly and Jason packed up and fled back to Indiana, settling in their hometown of Hobart. The case went cold.
We begin tonight marking 1 year since an Iron River man went missing. Chris Regan was last seen on or around October 14th of 2014. His vehicle was found at a park and ride lot just 4 miles east of Iron River. The disappearance of the 53-year-old man is described by police as suspicious. The Iron River Police Chief says that the search is continuing. In fact, a search is underway of the Caspian mine in the Leo Raimondi Jr. Memorial Park in Caspian. If you can help police with this investigation, you're asked to contact the Iron River Police.
With Chris officially remaining a missing person while Chief Frizzot refused to give up, she continued investigating from Michigan, even consulting a psychic medium who claimed to receive visions of Chris being attacked in the Cochran house. The psychic's description would later prove eerily accurate, though it provided no legal evidence. Then, in February 2016, everything changed. Kelly called emergency services, hysterical, and claiming Jason wasn't breathing.
Wake County 911. His face is like blue. He's breathing barely. I don't know what's wrong. He's throwing up. He's sweating. I need an ambulance right away.
And how old is the person?
37. Just get an ambulance here right now.
Okay, stay on the line with me.
I need an ambulance here right away.
Okay, they've been dispatched.
When paramedics arrived, Jason was already dead. Kelly told authorities he'd overdosed on heroin, which he used to manage his chronic pain. But the medical examiner's findings told a different story. Jason hadn't simply overdosed. He'd been murdered, strangled while subdued by drugs. The man who'd helped Kelly kill her lover was now himself a victim of homicide. With Jason's death, investigators in both Michigan and Indiana joined forces, sensing they finally had leverage to make Kelly talk. Detective Jeremy Ogden from the Hobart Police Department took the lead on building a relationship with Kelly, engaging in a psychological chess match that would span months. Ogden employed unconventional tactics, even carving the words "Chris is here" into a tree at a park Kelly frequented, hoping to unsettle her into believing Regan was somehow reaching from beyond death. The strategy worked. Kelly began opening up, though her confessions would be layered with lies and manipulation designed to minimize her own culpability. Kelly fled to Kentucky when authorities prepared to charge her, but U.S. Marshals tracked her down in April 2016. While in custody, she fashioned weapons from her eyeglasses and made threats against corrections officers, revealing a violent nature that had been carefully hidden beneath her friendly exterior. During extensive interrogations, totaling nearly 70 hours, Kelly finally confessed to both murders, though she attempted to paint herself as a victim forced into violence by Jason's jealous rage. According to Kelly's confession, she'd killed Jason out of revenge for taking away the only good thing in her life when he murdered Chris. She described injecting Jason with a lethal dose of heroin before smothering him with her hands, watching him die within minutes. She then led investigators back to Michigan, taking them on a bizarre field trip through the woods where she'd helped dispose of Chris's remains. In a disturbing display, Kelly stopped frequently to smoke cigarettes and even requested pizza for lunch while searching for body parts, showing no remorse for the horror she'd participated in. In the remote forest, Investigators finally discovered Chris's skull with a bullet hole matching Kelly's description, along with his eyeglasses and fragments of the rifle used to kill him. The discovery brought some closure to Terry and Chris's other loved ones, though the brutality of his death would haunt them forever. Terry later described seeing Kelly in court, watching as the convicted killer stared at her with a disturbing grin that revealed the darkness beneath her ordinary appearance. Kelly Cochran was convicted in early 2017 of first-degree murder in Chris Regan's death and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. She pleaded guilty to Jason's murder in April 2018, receiving an additional 65 years. But even as justice was served for these two known victims, a more disturbing question emerged. Were Chris and Jason her only victims? While incarcerated at Michigan's Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility, Kelly began making claims that sent chills through investigators across multiple states. She hinted at other bodies buried in Indiana, Michigan, Tennessee, and Minnesota. Her own brother came forward, telling authorities he believed Kelly had killed as many as 9 additional people. At one point, Kelly claimed to have killed 21 victims, though she's never provided specific locations or identities for these alleged murders. Prosecutors included language in her Indiana plea deal that prevents her from being charged with any additional murders in that state if she comes forward with information, essentially giving her immunity to confess without consequence. The most disturbing allegation that emerged involved cannibalism. Friends of the Cochrans reported attending a barbecue at their home not long after Chris disappeared, where Kelly served hamburgers that tasted strange and had an unusual texture. One guest described the meat as transparent and different from anything they'd eaten before. Investigators theorized Kelly and Jason may have ground up portions of Chris's body and served him to unsuspecting neighbors. The claim has never been proven, but the timing and Kelly's own hints about what happened to Chris's remains have left investigators unable to dismiss the horrific possibility. Former police chief Laura Frizzo, who would eventually begin a relationship with Detective Ogden during the investigation, believes firmly that Kelly is responsible for more deaths than the 2 she was convicted of. The question of whether Kelly Cochran is truly a serial killer with numerous victims or simply a manipulative liar seeking attention remains unanswered. What's certain is that her crimes shattered multiple families, exposed the dangers hidden behind seemingly ordinary facades, and left a trail of unanswered questions across the Midwest. Today, Kelly remains imprisoned in Michigan, serving a sentence that ensures she'll never walk free again. Chris Regan's loved ones found some measure of justice, though the pain of his brutal death and the manner of his disposal continues to affect them. Terry, his former girlfriend, has slowly tried to rebuild her life, though she admits to struggling with trust and constantly questioning the motives of people around her. The forest where Chris's remains were scattered stands as a quiet memorial to a veteran whose trust was betrayed in the most horrific way imaginable. The case of Kelly Cochran serves as a haunting reminder that evil doesn't always announce itself with obvious signs. Sometimes it wears a friendly smile, makes jokes, and appears entirely normal until the mask finally slips. But the families of missing persons across Michigan, Indiana, Tennessee, and Minnesota continue to wonder if their loved ones might be among Kelly's unnamed victims, waiting to be found in forests that keep their secrets well. Justice came for Chris Regan and Jason Cochran. But for those other possible victims, if they exist, justice remains painfully out of reach.